What's good everyone? Today I got a Dagath build for you guys that I've been finding very nice to play at level cap. That is probably a bit different than what you'll typically find for her. So to waste no time, let's get into the idea behind it before going into the specifics of the build. I call this build the Unholy Trinity Dagath, the name coming from its use of the 3 primary defensive options for level cap: shield gating, invisibility, and invulnerability. Dagath's Wyrd Scythes will be for shield gating, her Grey Spirit provides invulnerability, and finally subsuming on Cyte 09's Evade for invisibility. Why Dagath? Well, Dagath's Grey Spirit and Cyte's Evade are both limited by potentially punishing cooldowns, but return that disadvantage into a feature by what I refer to as cooldown cycling. If Grey Spirit is on cooldown, we activate Evade. When Evade would go on cooldown, Grey Spirit will be off cooldown and ready to activate again. All the while, we can fill any gaps of shield gating from Wyrd Scythes. This also means Evade's weak point mechanic becomes optional. Not using weapons that hit heads easily, or if you have bloodthirsty teammates, isn't going to result in you being punished for letting Evade go on cooldown. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around and I'll give you all the details you need. Time for a more in-depth look at Dagath's abilities for this build. Starting with her passive, Dagath has a 35% chance to increase health and energy orb gains by 300%. Unfortunately, this doesn't work with Equilibrium or Violet Shards. This build won't be doing anything special to take advantage of this, but if you needed extra energy economy for some reason, you can use Amber Shards with energy orb effectiveness to boost this effect, as those are more duplicative. Wyrd Scythes is Dagath's first ability. Casting the skill will create a ring of spinning scythes that will seek out enemies after a second has passed. These inflict viral and a slow debuff on enemies that are struck, and also spread the doom debuff from her second ability. We'll cover that in a moment. There is a 1 second cooldown on this ability, preventing it from being cast again until the scythes are launched. The uses for this build are pretty straightforward: shield gating, viral application, spreading doom, and the additional slow debuff. Dagath's second ability is Doom. This ability is a tad bit more complicated. Casting Doom will inflict enemies affected within the cone radius with the Phantom Wraith debuff. There is a 1 second delay before this ability can be cast again, similar to Wyrd Scythes. Attacking enemies with this debuff will cause a small scythe icon to appear above the heads when they take damage. A percentage of the damage you deal to enemies affected by Doom will be inflicted to the targets again as true damage via this scythe. This damage redirection scales up to 100% with 286% ability strength. Viral is really the only way to get an increased effect out of this redirected damage. Roar or sources of damage vulnerability won't work here, and as mentioned earlier, Wyrd Scythes can be used to spread doom to other nearby enemies. But at the end of the day, we treat this just as a damage buff and ability for tougher targets. Don't worry too much about min-maxing the uptime or trying to hit that 100% redirection threshold. In general, it will be overkill for even level cap. Grey Spirit is Dagath's third ability and the core of this build. Activating this ability will give Dagath an indefinite critical damage buff, scaling with strength. This critical damage buff is then doubled against any enemies affected by Doom. If fatal damage is taken, this critical damage buff is then lost, but Dagath will become invulnerable for some time. This invulnerability period scales with ability duration. During this time, any enemies killed will have a guaranteed health orb drop, which is great for topping off energy of Equilibrium or Violet Shards. At the end of the invulnerability period, Grey Spirit will have a 25-second cooldown that can't be reduced by typical means. She does have an augment for this ability, Spectral Spirit, but I won't be using it in this build as it feels much more like a downgrade, and I personally don't like how it flows. But of course, give it a try yourself. So far, Dagath's abilities play into each other quite well. However, I will be subsuming over her fourth ability with Cyte's Evade. Activating Evade will make you invisible for a short duration. You can however extend this duration with weak point kills. For many enemies, this simply means aiming for headshots. However, Evade has a 60-second cooldown that begins the moment this ability is activated. Let's say we have 25 seconds of invisibility on the initial cast, but we don't extend the timer at all. While at the end of the invisibility duration, we'll be stuck with a 35-second cooldown. If Evade was your primary defense, well, you're kinda screwed until you are off cooldown. This is why we will alternate cooldowns between Evade and Grey Spirit as needed. For Archon Shards, I'll be running 2 Amber cast speed, 1 Amber parkour velocity, and 2 Violet Equilibrium Shards. Per usual, these are optional and mostly quality of life. The Violet Shards do save a mod slot, so we don't have to slot Equilibrium, but you can always ease your energy economy with other options. In the aura slot, I'm using Corrosive Projection. We don't have any way the armor strip, but frankly it is unneeded with how much damage Dagath provides with Doom and the Grey Spirit critical damage buff. For enemies that do have armor though, just slotting in Corrosive Projection is about 80% more damage in the best case scenario. If you aren't using auger mods on a companion weapon or on your own secondary, use Beef for Spite instead. For defensive mods, I'm using Catalyzing Shields and Rolling Guard. Catalyzing Shields gives us the option to comfortably shield gate if we need to with Wyrd Scythes. Wyrd Scythes has a 1 second cooldown, but Catalyzing Shields will guarantee a 1.3 second shield gate every time we cast it. Rolling Guard is just for status effect cleanse or iframes for a messy situation. You can get away without these mods thanks to evading Great Spirit, but I like very comfortable builds, so I run these extra defenses anyway. Feel free to switch them out for something else. For duration, I'm running both narrow-minded and prime continuity. Duration is important to extend both your invulnerability and invisibility. At 250% duration, Great Spirit will give 25 seconds of invulnerability, matching its cooldown. This is also where Evade's initial cast will last 25 seconds, covering the entire 25 second cooldown of Great Spirit. You can run lower duration, but be prepared to shield gate more often in between cooldowns if you aren't extending Evade with weak point kills. Alternatively, you can push your duration to over 300% for full uptime between these two abilities. Since I still wanted to make use of the rest of the gas kit, I opted for 169% range, with overextended and Archon stretch. This gives about 25 meters of range on both Wyrd Scythes and Doom, which I find to be comfortable enough. Only use Archon stretch if you are using a companion that can trigger it like Diriga or a Panzer modded with electric. Otherwise, just slot the normal version. For strength, the only mod I'm running here is Blind Rage. I felt that my damage is fine with this amount of strength as we can still hit 269% ability strength after all the other buffs on the build, but if you really want to max out your Doom's damage redirection, drop some range or defenses for Umbra Intensify. Since I'm using Violet Shards, Prime Flow is the only investment I'm making for energy economy. I don't feel like she needs much else given her passive, though Archon Stretch also helps in this area. My final mod in the Exodus is Prime Sure-Footed. I like using weapons that tend to stagger me, and I dislike knockdowns. This is a skill issue on my part. If you don't want to be knocked down, but don't own Prime Sure-Footed, use Sure-Footed and drop another mod on the build for Fortitude. This will grant you 100% knockdown immunity. Handspring to get up faster is also an option. Otherwise, you can use whatever you like here or just leave it empty to save Forma or an Exilus adapter. For Arcanes, I'm slotting in both Molt Augmented and Arcane Crepuscular. These help make up our strength quite a bit, but Crepuscular also comes with a bonus for an additional 3 times crit damage multiplier for weapons when invisible. This is an additive final bonus. If you are alternating between Great Spirit and Evade, this means you'll always have some critical damage buff active. Alternatively, if you decide to keep clicking on heads, you'll have a massive critical damage bonus between this Arcane and your Great Spirit buff if you maintain the two. My loadout choice for her is my typical Burston, Epitaph, and Falcor. Any critical focused weapon should do great with the Dagath, but here are the builds I'm running. Burston, I'm running a typical Acuity setup for single target. Nothing special, just a run-of-the-mill viral build. My Epitaph is a standard viral primer, or secondary fortifier for added protection. You could also use Corrosive since you get viral from your first ability, but honestly this is just for me being lazy and using viral on trash mobs at level cap when I don't have any stacks. I do also use an Augur mod here for shield getting with Catalyzing Shields, as well as the Karnus mod set. The Karnus mod set is simply to give me some added bonus status immunity while using my Falcor. It is completely unnecessary otherwise. Finally, a melee influence pure electric Falcor for mod clear. If you're using mostly primaries or secondaries, just take the Praetos in this slot for the extra parkour velocity and sprint speed. For your companion, you also have a lot of freedom. I'm just opting to use Diriga on this build for additional priming and a Verglas Prime to activate Tenacious Bond. If you don't have a Verglas Riven and want to use Tenacious Bond, just use Burst Laser Prime so that you can put your Augur mod here on your companion weapon and save a slot on your secondary. If you would like more in-depth guides for some of these weapons, let me know in the comments. And to end things off, I'll be using Madurai for dealing with Frax and Void Cascade. The additional power strength from Chain Slings and cast speed from Transference are also great in general. Otherwise, just take whatever suits you best, like Narrowmon if you are a melee user. But that's all I have for you in this one. If you try the build out, let me know how you like it, and any changes you made for your own playstyle. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and as always, thanks for watching.